Fred Lyle from the Upper House, and the Upper House is sitting on, Fred tells me, till 9 or even 10 o'clock tonight. Days of old, Fred, and wish you well in that regard. Ex-General, ex-President of the Legislative Council, joining us tonight, Max Willis, and good to see Max again. And with him comes John Caswell, also a member of the Upper House, as I understand John is. And to John Moore, my thanks for those words of introduction, to General Sharp and Glennie, Colonel John Haynes, and Rob Morrison. Great to see and hear his golden voice. I think he'd be a great announcer on 2CH or the ABC of yesteryear. It hasn't changed one little bit. Rob, wherever you are, somewhere there.
Thanks.
Doing a good job always and stepping up as he did around Albury, Wodonga, Canberra, and now tonight Sydney. Members of the Council, and especially not only members of the Reserve Forces Day Council and associated with that, but also of the Boer War grouping and Sons and Daughters, which is stepping up. I just want to say 4 things to you tonight. Firstly, I want to salute all who've served our great country from Sudan and the Boer War right through to Iraq and Afghanistan, and are still serving. This night in the Sinai Desert, this night at Juba in South Sudan, a handful of Australian Armed Forces personnel on the White Nile there. I met with them last July when I had to go there as envoy for the Australian government to South Sudan, Eritrea and Bhutan, associated with the United Nations Security Council campaign, but of course our lingering forces in Afghanistan and many other places around the world, not the least of which, don't forget, is an element providing embassy protection in Baghdad, Iraq, where after bombs have been going off again this last fortnight. We salute all who serve, and especially we salute the reservists who, as one minister has said, many a Navy ship would not be able to sail today but for the reservist component on those Navy ships. Likewise with the Army and likewise with the Air Force. Secondly, I do want to salute Sir Lawrence Street. Grandson, 3 streets in a row were Chief Justice of the oldest Supreme Court in Australia, the Supreme Court of New South Wales. His grandfather, his father, and his good self. I think they broke the line at that point. Enough was enough. Of course, Sir Lawrence is well known to you, and it's a great privilege to step up. He's just 3 or 4 kilometres east of us from this location in Parliament House, Sydney. And to you, Sir Lawrence, we wish you well at these times, and we salute the magnificent service you gave, including as the Administrator Backup Lieutenant Governor of the State of New South Wales, a role that comes with being a former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of New South Wales. I think we should give, in absentia, Sir Lawrence Street a round of applause. The third salute I propose, John Moore, you will agree with, is to the Honourable Neville Howes, VC. And I choose him quite deliberately because he won his Victoria Cross, as I was reminded again tonight, in the Boer War at the turn of a century in South Africa, where he rode forth on his steed to rescue a trumpeter who had fallen, injured, shot, jumped off his horse, threw the trumpeter over his shoulders, and in a jagged way ran back to the lines and made it safely back to the Allied lines. And the Boers, good marksmen that they were not able to nail Neville Howes on that occasion. Granted VC, but then backed up for more, and was at Gallipoli, along with so many other Australians, and landed at Gallipoli and served there for a period of time. Eventually, after World War I, entered federal parliament for the seat of Calais, and went on to become Minister for Defence, for a period Minister for Health, because he was in his own right a surgeon as well. Now that's just a typical CV of several hundred Australians you could pick. I just choose him because there he was at Anzac, at Gallipoli, but he'd already been right through the Boer War. And then from all that he thought, I'd better give something back to my lost mates. I better make a contribution through serving in the federal parliament, if they want me, and they did. They elected him several times for the seat based on Orange, the federal seat of Calais, and subsequently served in the ministry of Billy Hughes, or more particularly Lyons was correction. No, it was S.M. Bruce was Prime Minister at that particular time. Which leads me on to salute one other person here tonight, in the roundabout way, that golden person who arguably is the undeniable most senior of our ilk as reservists, national servicemen, militia, CMF, whatever terminology you want to use. He grew up in a small country town called Jerilderie. He met in Jerilderie Main Street Ned Kelly. Ned was having a bit of trouble with the ATM of the era, so he took direct action to draw a bit of money out of the Bank of New South Wales over a 4-day period in what, 1878. This person then went, because the headmaster of Jerilderie Primary School wrote, "I can teach this person no more. He must go to Melbourne." Went to Scotch College, and there he went on to Melbourne University, obtaining degrees in arts, law and engineering. Subsequently, he devised a Pioneer Concrete, Monia Concrete companies, built bridges, Benalla, Bendigo, all over Western Australia, and gave expert evidence right here in the New South Wales Supreme Court on a famous case between downstream irrigators near Jerilderie and upstream irrigators near Urana and Narandra, and he swayed. The evidence was so powerful and so expert, the engineer coming out of him, you work out who I'm talking about, it came out that the court ruled in favour of the downstream irrigators. This incredible person then signed on and took the 14th Brigade and was the most senior person on the AIF convoy that sailed in October 1914, went to Colombo. I've just come back from Sri Lanka. There's some very familiar looking faces around Colombo because I just discovered 0.1% of the convoy swam ashore and visited the red light district of Colombo, never to be found again, causing great consternation to this person who went on to Egypt, to Gallipoli, to the Western Front. He did something in 1916 in Egypt along the Suez Canal. His name, John Monash, son of Louis Monash and Bertha Monash. He was from Prussia. They migrated to Australia and they dropped the C out of their name. And it was 1 year after the landing at Gallipoli that Monash, troops in training, getting ready to go to the Western Front in France, said we must have a special day on the 25th of April. We'll fall in the brigade, the division, we'll run through a series of services at the Ode, and then, being a hot day, we'll let the troops off the afternoon, they all go and have a swim in the Suez Canal. And that possibly, New Zealand claims credit, helped by the time zone, but was certainly one of the very first Anzac Day services created in the field by the same said John Monash. And long story short, means we're getting bogged down on the Western Front. The Battle of the Bulge was turned on Anzac Day at Villers-Bretonneux and just near Amiens in 1918. Finally, Monash got his chance to lead a particular battle at a place called Hamel. And I took the chance whilst in Rome to walk that battleground. And at 3:10, they went over the top. And a whole different approach was employed by Monash, a holistic approach. Protect your infantry. Don't just order them to jump out of the trenches to the last moment. Embed a tank with each platoon. Embed and walk the artillery 4 minutes forward, not 5 minutes as the Germans would have expected, and just keep the barrage going forward. And he wrote famously, if everything goes right, the Battle of Hamel will take 90 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, the Battle of Hamel was successful and took 93 minutes. In accordance with the official records. I dwell on Monash because he was the quintessential example of old, Jewish, cantankerous, but stepped forward for his country, got criticised by C.W. Bean and Keith Murdoch and others, and yet arguably was our greatest general ever. By his holistic strategic approaches, helped turn the Western Front and the Hindenburg Line, and by the 11th of November that year, Armistice Day. The Australian battalions had been on the front for about 4 straight months. They came off the line 2 weeks before Armistice Day. You know something? That's part of the reason why the role of Monash is downplayed, because he wasn't right there on the spot on that 11th of November. So you've got no photos of him or the Australians on the front line that day. They were all back in London or back behind the lines resting on that occasion. Well, enough of that, because the Yanks did something in 1976 which I think we could well follow. They decided to promote George Washington from General to Field Marshal, or Field Marshal equivalent, General of the Armies, in 1976. Now, George Washington was long dead by 1976, I think you'll agree. And they posthumously promoted George. And my argument is, and it'll come out in a book next year, Australia people should write to their parliamentarians, if they wish, their federal parliamentarians, and give consideration to what else does the federal parliament do in the centenary year of Gallipoli. They might well consider a 3-line bill which would simply promote 1 step in rank only, so it can't be abused, General John Monash to the rank of Field Marshal, as a salute to the AIF, as a salute through that symbolic gesture to the AIF. Half the Australian War Memorial is strongly in favour. The other half says you can't change history, and where's your precedent? There's a couple of other precedents I won't delay this with tonight. Something just to think about. But whether that happens or not, Neville Howes and John Monash and so many others are splendid examples to those who are with us tonight from the Younger Brigade and those who are out there tonight serving Navy, Army and Air Force. We do salute them all, and it's a great privilege to step up for the Reserve Forces Day in this salute off service in the parade, which I won't be out in July this year. I'll be at the Wagga one, and hopefully next year I'll be at the one here in Sydney. A great honour to follow in the footsteps of Sir Lawrence Street. We salute Sir Lawrence, but we salute them all. We salute all who served Australia, and especially the role played by reservists.